This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to learn how to make this gum paste rose with just your bowl scraper. So we're making these easy gum paste roses. You can see they look nice, beautiful, like porcelain. Generally, you only need 5 to 7 petals, so they're quick to make, and we're using only our bowl scraper. And these are really cheap to get if you don't already have, but I find that most people who do a lot of baking and decorating already have them on hand. You're looking for one that is made out of a firm but flexible plastic and is really thin. If it has a nice curve on one side, that's fantastic. What you want to avoid are the thicker silicone ones because you won't be able to do what we're doing with those. And these generally run somewhere around $1, maybe even under, depending on where you buy them and how you buy them. So they're really cheap investment to have on hand in your kitchen, and they're handy for a lot of other things. So let's get started making some roses. To get started, we're going to color our gum paste. It'll make it a little easier to see on camera what we're doing, but also it'll give our roses some color. And the first thing you want to do is kind of warm that gum paste up. If you're using quite a bit, split it into 2 or more sections, just so it's easier to manipulate with your hands. If you're just pulling it out of your pouch or bucket or however it's stored, it's going to be a little stiff if you haven't used it in a while especially. So you just want to make sure that it's nice and pliable and you can stretch it, and then it'll be ready to color. We're using just a little bit of liquid gel color. And before I color it, I'm just gonna pull off a little bit. This is especially if you have some that's been sitting for a while and there's any little crusty pieces on it that you feel like you shouldn't be mixing back in, pull those off, put it in just a tiny little bowl with a little bit of water. There's only about less than a tablespoon, maybe like 2 teaspoons in there. We're just gonna let that sit, and that's gonna make a little tacky glue for us if we need it. Sometimes I don't even need it with these. I'm gonna slip on some gloves so my hands don't get super dirty for the rest of this video, but these aren't necessary if you're just doing stuff at home. And we'll just put on just a little bit of that liquid gel color, make a nice little light pink. And if you're just mixing small colors of gum paste, you can just use a little taffy pull. So just kind of pull and stretch it. This will also help kind of work it and warm it up. So if you get it to the point where you can kind of start manipulating it, that's a good time to start mixing in your color, and then you can warm it the rest of the way up. If you're mixing and it's getting a little tacky, you can use either a little powdered sugar or a little vegetable shortening, so things that most people have on hands if they're baking and decorating, just to keep it from sticking to your hands or your gloves if you're using them. And usually having one or the other of those is enough. You just need something to keep it from sticking. You can see really quickly, just pulling it apart, smushing it back together, we get a nice even color. And we're just making beautiful roses, so we don't even have to blend it all the way. That's fantastic. We've got a nice shade of pink going. We've got our little gum glue going, so we're ready to stick all our petals together. We're gonna go ahead and get started making some roses. We're gonna start making our gum paste roses. Our pink is all ready to go, and we've got the other little things we need. We've got our bowl scraper. I have just a knife. It can be a paring knife, steak knife, anything with a relatively short blade that's smooth, right? It doesn't need to be serrated, that we can just help to use, cut some pieces off. And I've got some powdered sugar and a dusting puff. If you don't have a dusting puff, you can literally just have some powdered sugar out so you can kind of tap your fingers in it when you need to keep things from sticking, if it's sticking just a little bit. So we're just gonna go ahead and quickly roll a log. So just get your gum paste working. This is a good time. If it's sticking on the table or anything, just dust a little out there, right? Nice and easy, even if you don't have a puff. And we're gonna cut off a piece that's gonna be our center. And then I'm gonna go ahead and cut off 5 to 7 smaller pieces. They can be different sizes. It doesn't have to be exact. They're usually about half to a third of the size of the original piece. Let me just count. I'll get myself one more. And this will be ready to go. So what I'm gonna do is roll that center, that larger piece I cut off, into a ball. So give it a good squish, roll it around. If you're not used to rolling things by hand, kind of keep your bottom hand cupped a little bit. You can see that makes a nice little kind of domed little void there. And then it's easy just to roll it around and get a nice shape. Right? You can roll really nice little balls, whether you're making cookies or doing stuff with gum paste. pretty easily that way. I'm gonna get that down on the table, and to make it into a teardrop shape, I'm gonna take my hand, and instead of resting it flat, I'm gonna tilt it at an angle. So think about it like you just wanna start flat, and then angle to one side, and then roll back and forth, right? You can see that's creating an angle on the top of that, and just keep going till you get a nice little point. And that is gonna make the center of our flower. And it might seem a little big right now. We can use this to make a nice big rose, or we can use it to make a smaller rose, and we'll pinch some off the bottom. But we don't even need any wires, sticks, or anything else like that. It can just sit there like that. Next thing I'm gonna do is just loosely roll up all of those balls and just kind of toss them to the side. You just wanna get them kind of smoothed out on the edges. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to kind of have a nice rounded, smooth edge to them. They can be any kind of wonky shape. And actually, I think sometimes that helps get you more beautiful roses because you pull more unusual and unique petals, and it kind of makes everyone look different, which is fantastic. So once I've got those ready to go, I'm just gonna take one of these, take my bowl scraper, and just gently start pressing it down there, right? So you can see I've started to kind of compress that piece and make it into a rounded little shape. And what I'm doing as I'm pushing with my bowl scraper is I'm gonna push into it and use some pressure, and you'll get that little bend, and I'm gonna scrape against it. So I'm pushing in a downward angle, putting some pressure in it, and you'll see the bowl scraper kind of gives and bends, and you can just use it, just repeated strokes, different directions, and you can pull long petals, you can pull wide petals, you can do anything you want. And I like doing this on my stainless steel table. Any surface that has a flat, smooth surface should work nicely. And your petals should pull off nice and easily. If they're sticking a little bit, you can always use just a little bit of that powdered sugar to get them to pull off easier. But I find most of the time I don't even need it. So I'm just gonna get 3 of these ready to go. And if it's a little tacky, letting it sit for just a little bit will help. Just repeat the same process. Pull in multiple directions each time. Get it nice and thin on the edges and leave some buildup on the back, and that'll make it nice and easy to work with. And I don't even mind if they stick just a little bit, because sometimes that helps to pull a nice thin edge. So I've got 3 petals ready, so this is enough to do a flower center, right, if you're just doing a little bud. And I'm just going to take a tiny bit of my gum glue and pick a favorite petal. And for the center, I'll brush it pretty much over the surface. Now, if you don't have a paintbrush, literally you can just dip the tip of your finger in there and just put a little across. We don't need to be very exact with these, so very little equipment, very easy to make. And if you're just new to decorating, it's a kind of a very little investment. The only thing that's really special that we're gonna use is that bowl scraper. So you can see we just wrapped the petal around the top, kind of met up with our original edge, and then I just flare it out a little bit. And that gives us a nice closed center for the middle of our rose. We're gonna take these other 2 petals, just where the fat edge is, kind of at that bottom, just brush a little across, kind of like the bottom third or half. This is really just to get it to stick. And we're gonna go across from each other with these 2. So I'm gonna start where that little curl is, put one on, and then the second. And if you want to get kind of stylized, you can kind of tuck them inside of each other so it looks like it's really opening up. And just kind of press them against the bottom. And you can see if we take these and start curling them over, just give them a little bit of style and flair, those beautiful pulled edges start to make a wonderful little rose. And you can see this makes for a beautiful rose bud. And we can keep adding petals to get a full, more open rose. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the rest of my little petals and apply those. And if they've been sitting for a little bit, just roll them around in your hand, warm them up a little bit. Kind of warms up the surface, makes it easier for it to spread out. So just nice, even pressure. And it becomes, as you practice, really quick work. And sometimes if I have small pieces and I need to stretch it a little bit, I'll actually pick it up and reposition it a few times, and that can kind of help stretch and pull it into a larger petal. And I find the more unusual my shapes, the prettier my roses are. Makes them look nice and organic and beautiful. So we'll do the same thing where we just paint the bottoms. So I'm just gonna get these little bad boys lined up. Paint the bottoms, and I'm gonna do a cross, right? So that seam, I have two petals going that direction. I'm gonna go here. Just attach it to the bottom. And here. And at this point, if you feel like you're getting buildup, if you're getting too much excess, you can always trim some off too. And then go across from those as well. And this will give you a nice, beautiful, open rose. And generally, when I'm doing this now, I'm gonna give the bottom a bit of a squish, and then a trim, which is gonna seem kind of crazy, like I smashed it, but don't worry, you didn't. You just then open those petals back up, right? Because we didn't put any gum glue on the top edges of them, they won't stick together. And trimming off the bottoms actually helps join everything together and really make it all stick together. And I can just go in and shape the bottom a little bit if I need to, make it look a little more rounded, a little more like a rose, but you can see that gives us a beautiful open rose. It only took 7 petals. I could really even stop at 5 if I wanted to. And if you want to kind of shape it a little more, you can just go in there with a little bit of that glue, attach things anywhere you want. Just press them in. Get a little more style out of it. Shape those petals, make some curls and stuff. But it gives you really nice, beautiful roses really easily. And the only special piece of equipment we used was our little bowl scraper. Now, if you're worried about how do you dry these, easiest thing, take a little clean paper towel, crumple it up, and you can just set it on that at whatever angle you think it's going to be presented on the cake. If you're making really big ones and you're worried, you can also use a little just clean muffin cup and use those as little cups. So things that we all have on hand, usually baking cupcakes, any kind of cupcake papers, little muffin cups, you can use those along with paper towel to make little drying cups for them that then, you know, you can reuse later as well. And we have some excess, so we can make some more roses, but this is great because it requires no cutters. You don't need a ball tool, a veining tool, anything of that nature. You can make roses from any size. I've made them as small as a ½ inch and made little buds for the top of petit fours, all the way to big, probably like 4 or 5 inch size blossoms. They're easy enough to make little leaves for, and you can stick them right on the cake after they dry. You just want to make sure they sit out for at least 12 to 24 hours so they can start to firm up before you're putting them on any cakes.
If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.